All right, so we survived 8 tornadoes that was not too far from us. Like, seriously, not too far from us. And that is pretty wow. It's a lot of tornadoes. And that also was a major release process for me yesterday in the middle of the afternoon as things were ramping up. Boy, everything that was going through the process of purging and building and releasing, going through that energy conversion. So when there's a climate change and it causes things in the body to replicate, multiply, and then change out the old for the new, then you have to feed the body to release and to rebuild. That goes through its process. That's what your colon and your intestines are for, to change out the old, to bring in the new. And then when it's finally time to release everything all at once, the stuff that I was pulling out of my body last night was way more than what I even ate the day before. It was like the last month's worth of like food and whatever else. And it was like Tootsie Rolls. Literally, it was like Tootsie Rolls. It was crazy. It reminded me of like what it was a couple of years ago when I really had to throw myself in the shower and pull everything out, because that was again, another entity that the body was purging out. And it's a progressive thing. So that's every climate change, major climate change. And it caused then not only the body pushing out those poop demons when you think about it, but then also I developed an egg from that, or a few eggs. I don't know how many eggs I developed from that climate change. And then I released those demons. And so it was just, wow. And then all the tornadoes hit. They hit at around midnight, and I heard the wind just howling outside my window. I mean, I was expecting, I won't say expecting the worst. I did have my bags packed of sorts, but I was like in my bed going like, fuck it, we'll just figure it out. But when I was looking at the radar, it didn't look like we were going to get hit with anything. But like anything, you don't know. Things can come out of the last minute, last second. So, but I'm thinking, I'm surmising that what the system is doing is cleaning up the rural counties and forcing people through climate change and destruction to push them into the inner cities, such as Canton, Akron, Cleveland, Youngstown. And other areas will be modified, and so people will be packed on top of each other, which is the intention, and then everyone fights it out through the microbes. That's how I've seen, because of the whole human habitation zones and the high-speed rails connecting one population center to another. And so those high-speed rails, that's like America 2050 a long time ago. Now it's RPA.org. But the high-speed rails and the smart cities and the human habitation zones, that's exactly how they want things done. And I understand that. I mean, I have my own dreams of utopia. But before we get to utopia, you have to deal with death and destruction. And you have to deal with so many things that you could say, no, it's Mother Nature. She's angry at us. It's God. He's angry at us. And okay, that's fine. Believe whatever you want. But that's what the ultimate intention is that humans have their own little space to do what they need to do, to let Mother Nature finally proliferate, free the animals, free the humans that feel they're enslaved, and make the world a better place. And through that, you're going to have to see ugly. You're going to have to face ugly in your immune system. You're going to have to face ugly out there. You're going to face a lot of ugly. And that's how you earn the beauty, is facing the ugly. And not everybody wants to do that, and I get it. So they live in their fantasy world. They surround themselves by people who keep that fantasy going. And I understand that. But I've been facing ugly for so many years. I faced a lot of ugly the last 7 years. Faced a lot of ugly in my own immune system the last 3 years. Finally, I'm learning to dream about the beauty. Because I see beauty every so often, yes. But when we're going through a major climate change and people are dropping like flies and they have their issues with air, food, and water, and they're activism, they're resisting, there's some ugliness going on out there. Children are radicalized, children become predators, adults become predators. You really have to watch out for a lot of things. I mean, we're going to see a lot of ugly, if not already. We've been seeing ugly. And the key thing about it in the J world is to realize that you're going to have to see the ugly before you see the pretty. And yeah, it's going to be painful. And so, yeah, when I released those demons last night, and I felt like, so they're having that period. Now I realized that having that period, yeah, that was from a major climate change was going on. And you think about it, that this scar here, before it used to be like raised with a little bit of scar tissue. I'll turn this off here. With scar tissue. And now, and I think the last couple weeks, there was a little bit of the itchiness on the scar. And even yesterday, there was a little bit of a hive that was at the end of the scar, at the bottom part versus the top. And so that was like a demon of sorts that I probably picked up from my dog when she was going through her situation. And so there was still residual from that. And that's why the meninges and all these different inflammation things that go on, because it is the beast waking up within. And if you don't release that beast, then that beast will stay inside, then force people to attack it, to starve it. And that's what you're seeing out there in the population, is people hold beast within. They try to starve it. They try to attack it. They try to do all these things, and then they don't survive the war inside their body. And so that's kind of the issue. And so finally, when I released that beast, and who knows if there's still a residual of that, and the fact that this was inflamed a little bit, was itchy the last couple weeks, was telling me that there was still residual monster, from that. And it, it's time to just deal with it and let it go through its process. By the way, I want to show you that I did get my little towels. This is from Asia. It's not what my husband expected, but this is the towel. It's Asian towels. They're very different than Western. I was like, what the hell did you buy, Jillian? But anyways, so yeah, so I was releasing some demons, and I'm hoping that that's like the last major part that came out of that, because that was holding on. I was holding on to my dog's demons within. That's the crazy thing, is that when you have animals, you have their demons within, and it's competing with your immune system. And once you release the people around you, release the animals around you, and you just deal with your own bullshit, literally, you're going to understand a freedom like no other. But you have to go through the pain if you even know what to expect. That's the thing. I know what to expect, because I've been dealing with the pain and suffering of releasing demons the last 3 years, and even more so the last 7 years. But there was a marked difference when I'm finally my dog, I put her down because the suffering was too much for everybody. If she didn't have those holes in her belly, because she was releasing the angry yellow choleric infection that was in her through her behind. And then it was just me trying to feed her to fill up those holes from the vet system's operations of attacking tumors and spaying and neutering her or whatever. And so, if she didn't have those fucking holes in her body, she potentially could have survived climate change, because she did release a lot of that infection at the end of that time when the climate changed. That animals right now are not surviving. They're going through the climate change. They're going to the vet system. Okay, they can handle another treatment, until one day they won't be able to handle the treatments anymore, because the climate will be that aggressive. And the more you resist climate change, the more the body will want to purge out, and then it's all out, either suffering so much or died suddenly. So yeah, so when she was released and I put her down, and finally no more having to deal with taking care of an animal, and I was free to just take care of myself and my husband. Okay? And I'm telling you, when you finally scale down all of your responsibilities, that is releasing yourself from the jail. So, just because I don't work like traditional sense, doesn't mean I'm like free and clear. No, I am accountable to my government. I'm accountable to my husband. I'm accountable to what I need to take care of as far as my own personal and professional development, whatever that means. And so no matter what, you're always going to be accountable to something or somebody, but You got to scale down the stresses and the competition for your time and your energy and for your immune system. And one of the biggest ways to free yourself is free yourself from the animals. Free yourself from enslaving yourself to feel like you have to save something. That you have to go and get justice for something. You know, that's the ultimate freedom. When you don't have to get justice for something or somebody. And that's like, wow, that's the jail of people, is they have to go get justice for something or somebody. And so I'm just going to go down my timeline, okay, because mine as well. But I see people posting stuff about recalls. There's drug recalls, there's food recalls, and I'll say, by the way, all the food recalls are based upon a deficient population. That's the Codex Alimentarius. Is a system realizing how deficient people are, how intolerant they are, and so when the climate does change, it's going to change people's tolerance levels, obviously. Because the more that your immune system is activated, the more the life is going to aggravate your body. It's going to either make your body try to purge things out, or it's going to wake up other beasts within, causing then rapid growth. It's going to cause excessive exponential growth that people can't get ahead of. Yeah, the cancers. When the body is deficient, hosting an opposing force that has its own immortalized germline cell with its own downline of somatic cells, that's what people are in the fight to the death, is through the cancers, disease, the autoimmune disorders. And so all the food recalls are based upon a deficient population because, yes, the climate has changed. Codex Alimentarius has kicked in. I can bet you the amount of the microbes in the food supply have not changed since 1955. I'm just pulled that out of my ass, 1955. Intolerance to life has increased with each generation. So as mothers and fathers procreate on bodies in deficit, their children become more and more intolerant because they're inheriting the intolerance from the parents, and they can't seem to assimilate to the current food supply in the current environment, and they're taking more of the remedies. They're getting more surgeries. They keep having food taken from them. So these kids can't handle anything. Which is why the Food and Drug Administration has to keep testing food and drugs based upon the general population's tolerance. And you'll see more and more food recalls as more and more kids and adults can't handle anything in their environment. So you can put that in your pipe and smoke it. Yeah, the war is on deficient humans. That's what this whole scale down is about. People who are intolerant will take themselves out because they'll starve themselves. They'll remedy themselves to death. They'll carve out everything. Give me all your food that you don't want to eat. If you're afraid of the food supply and the recalls, you're becoming less and less tolerant to life. People are exhibiting their own weaknesses and they are advertising them across the world. I have no issues with any food recall. I'll eat that food. Hanging out with so many humans is worse than eating recalled food. It's the same stuff. Okay, so whatever's in that meat, they call it contaminants. It's not poison, it's just more life than people can handle. Well, imagine you go into a crowded room, you hang out with so many different people. You're exchanging spit with them because you're talking to them face to face. There's this whole ectoplasm that's being released from people when you're talking and hanging out, when you're putting your hands on all the different public surfaces, and then you're wiping your eyes and blowing your nose and you're touching everything. Can you imagine how much life you're ingesting by even going to a concert? You're so afraid of these food recalls, but yet you go to concerts and you pick up microbes everywhere. And it's influenced, it's activated. It's accelerated. Hanging out with so many humans is worse than eating recalled food because it's the same shit, but you're not getting the nutrients. You're inhaling the microbes, but you're not getting the nutrients that you would get like in that meat, in that milk, in that cheese, in those eggs, in those vegetables. See, at least the food will give me what I need to rebuild and release. The general population can't feed my immune system, but all food can, and I can release the demons. So again, all of your fear of the food supply, all of your fear of what they use to flavor your food, which is basically part of the wild animals that you claim to eat because you're all about animal sovereignty and animal this and eating wild that. You're eating wild game. That wild game's hormones are being used to flavor the food. What's the difference? There is no difference. And so if the climate, so now today on a body that released the demons, like I did last night, and it was so many freaking Tootsie Rolls. But I wasn't incapacitated like I was back in July of 2022. I was able to handle immune system activation, handle a period that I didn't even know I was going to get. I was able to handle the climate change. Yes, I had heart palpitations. Yeah, I had I don't think I had a few hives, but I had some major aggressive energy. Okay, you saw that the last couple weeks. I was so aggressively energetic. And when you saw that truth pour out of me, regardless if you believe or even agree with my truth or disagree with it, that came out. That was the innovation. That was the evolution. That was the baby. And the poop was the baby. The period was the baby. I didn't develop an actual baby. But my truth, my writing, my energy, everything was the evolution. And so I gave birth to another idea that people don't realize, is that the reason why we have so much brutality is because we have so many people who are deficient, who need to fill in their holes because they've been fractionalized. Families are fractions of each other. Children are fractions of you. The more you have kids, the more holes you put in yourself. The more you go get surgeries and oncology and herbs and extracts and remedies, the more you cause competition. The more you surround yourself with people and diversity and animals and other humans and some other things, the more competition you cause. And then you're not supposed to sell human life to people. That's why the system has to sanction what is acceptable as far as selling competition to people, selling animals, selling herbs and extracts, even selling your associations with people. People sell themselves all the time. Here, I want to hang out with you. You're going to be in microbial competition with them. When you go to a job, you're supposed to get compensated for the energy you exchange, as well as what kind of competition you'll be in when you're hanging out with your coworkers. Okay? And so whatever compensation you get from work should be going back to you to keep you alive and to give you some reserves so you're not mortgaged up to the yin yang, borrowing money so you can stay alive another day. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of revelations when you go through that pain and suffering. And that, I'm telling you, the energy I felt where I was just so aggressive, that was like a suffering, but it was like a truth. The truth was pouring out of me. Can you imagine those who've been activated in a different way, who've been trained in a different way to be psycho killers, to be completely just intolerant to whatever, and they see something and they act upon it because the energy is that formidable and that aggressive that they can't even redirect. The fact that you heard what I've been saying the last couple of weeks about friends and family and paying people to be around you, and why, when you finally become relatively self-sufficient, you're not going to pay people to be around you. You're not going to buy people's friendships. You're not going to give up your body, mind, and spirit so somebody can just ravage you literally in politics, religion, and science. So if the climate would stop shifting via HARP and CERN contrails, I would be the prototype, balanced and pain-free. Because after that period, oh my God, that's how I felt when I would go through that PMDD way back when. Right after my period and everything else, I would be on top of the world. I would have new ideas. I would be in a new lease on life. It would happen every fucking month. It was crazy. That's how I was able to survive almost everything I was doing. I'd go through a downward spiral, go through the hell with people that I would surround myself with or hunt for, and they would hunt for me, and then survive the situations and then go through it, release the demons and be on top of the world and go on to my next venture. And it was a constant adventure for 20 fucking years. Constant adventure of dying and reproducing my own evolution. Essentially, I mean, that does tax you and that will wear on you. And eventually that you got to have, that's what the whole J world was a little bit of respite from all of that. And so I just figured out if it was not for the crazy frequencies and the intent to scale on the world, I would be the prototype of a person who was relatively self-sufficient. I would only get my period if the climate changed drastically. And I would never have to treat sickness ever again. And I could eat all the food supply with no issues. Okay, that's utopia for me. That is utopia. You know, when I know that I can handle the air, food, and water on what I need to do to release the demons and rest and all that. And my husband is a very strong person. He finally left to go to work, but he was releasing yellow demons. Like my dog was releasing yellow demons at the time that climate changed for her. But again, if it wasn't for all the surgery, she could have survived climate change. My husband, thank gosh, has not gone through any surgeries that I know of. He's a very strong mother. He's a strong dude. But yes, releasing that infection. I told him it's choleric. Those are the 4 humors. You have the angry choleric. That's the aggression. That's the infection, aggression. That's what makes people angry. That's what makes dogs angry, is all that infection, that yellow stuff. And during climate change, especially after all the surgeries and everything else they go through and all that crap they go through, the body is fully infected. That's why they get bigger and bigger. Not just water retention, but people are full of infection. And when the climate does change, they have to release that demon. You can't hold that demon within, because then it will eat you alive. And so if the climate changed drastically, I would know how to deal with the symptoms of heart palpitations, rashes, fatigue, pain, and suffering. I would just feed the energy. All food. Make sure I release those crazy demons the way I have in my current book, and not using JJ. I would sleep and take a break from the world. This is not about good genetics. Someone said, about my hair and stuff, right? And I showed her those Facebook reels attached to Beatles songs. They're like, wow, your hair was short last year. Yeah. Because my hair was thinning out because the climate was changing. It was falling out and it was thinning out, and old world, new world type of stuff. And she's like, wow, your hair grew out. Well, yeah. She's like, must be good genetics. No, I don't drink. I don't go out there. I don't have to be out there with people. I stay home and stay safe. I eat all food, because not just eating all food and that's it. You have to release those demons. You have to feel pain and suffering. You can't be using J juice to cure yourself. When people cure themselves with J juice, it's not deadly, but then their body starts falling apart like they already expect anyways. And then you can't get a release and a rebuild. You can't regrow hair, because the body is holding on to old ancient cells that you've cured in your body. That's what I keep telling you. Get away from the J juice. At some point, once you do release those demons and get to a point of being cured, then you stay off the J juice, let the environment wake up the demons. You eat food, pull out the demons if you can, and feel all the different pain and suffering, and feed everything. And maybe stay home and stay safe. But people aren't doing that. They're taking the latest cures, even using J juice to cure themselves. Okay? I'm not saying it's a guarantee, but when you're skinny, you'll be cured easier because you're skinny. That's what I'm saying. People who are skinny, it's a matter of time before the environment blows a different direction, and then people don't survive because they don't have any kind of ability to convert the energy. They're already in resistance. And again, that's the laws of thermodynamics, entropy. Okay, energy can't be created or destroyed, only converted. Every time you go through an energy conversion, you lose intelligence, you lose substance. And if you're cured at 0 Kelvin, then the environment starts picking away and salting you out, energizing you out of existence, breaking things apart, because you can't seem to salt in and release through your everything and feel the pain and suffering. You can't seem to eat enough food to get ahead of the energy conversion. And so the body just survives on the old cells until it can't anymore. Okay, so this is not about good genetics. You can develop good genetics from what you have. It's called a lifestyle change. You could be the one to determine what is good and what is not good. See, I can't tell you what is good. I can't tell you what to feel pain. I can't tell you to change your life. But if you say somebody else has good genetics and you say that you don't, well, do you know what I've sacrificed to develop the genetics I have right now? I sacrificed socializing. I sacrificed a lot of things that people cannot sacrifice for whatever reason, because they have friends, they have family, they have social obligations. Their husband or wives will not let them change or relax. They won't give them permission to do that because they have an image to uphold. And when you're stuck and trapped in that, then you'll think that everyone else has good genetics, but you don't. And that might be actually technically true. but not because I was lucky. I had to work hard for that. It wasn't just given to me. The fact I was able to survive my childhood and adulthood gave me the opportunity to change my genetics to make them work for me. But again, I had to sacrifice a lot. Pleasure in paradise. I had to deal with the mocking and the ridicule. You know, if you can't do that, then yeah, you'll be subjected to somebody else's lifestyle. And so, after all is said and done, I would not need to socialize as much, and I would have my nose stuck in a book reading a website or watch documentaries. I would write so many reports and make wonderful food and admire the world I lived in. I would learn everything I could and develop boundaries and shed light on the future if it called for that. I would constantly be the best version of myself and cease to take so many risks to harm myself. You know, when people are like adrenaline junkies, because that's what they've been raised on, is to keep pumping that adrenaline constantly until they deplete themselves. I would be hormonally balanced, peaceful, productive, and hopefully the world would have changed by that time. I could walk down the street without worrying about rabid animals, humans, and roving drug addicts and drunk drivers. I would not have to worry about crazy religions, racism, discrimination, sexual predators, or bullies on the block. The flowers would bloom brighter and smell so sweet with fragrance, and bees would be buzzing, floating lazily on the long currents of energetic frequencies. The world would be different once we all learn how to purge the trauma and fill in your own holes and stop being so predatory in body, mind, and spirit. And that's where I'm taking into account that the reason why people are predatory and brutal is because they're deficient. Why are they deficient? Because they can't handle evolution or anything different or new to them. Even though they sense somebody else having issues, they personally absorb that and resist it as if it was them that was experiencing that situation. And then project how then people shouldn't be a certain way, because it goes against their own immune system or what they think is right and true. But that's the thing. Everything is about, I don't know. Everything's about understanding diversity, because, you know, when you see yellow flowers out there and you see the red flowers, do you think the red flowers are going against the yellow flowers? Oh God, you're yellow. You shouldn't be yellow. You should be red. I don't see maybe they do fight to the death. And then sometimes the red flowers will overtake the yellow flowers if their genetics are stronger. But humans have the ability to communicate and act on their stuff and do things almost immediately, whereas flowers, they have to go through that time and evolution, and genetics would determine over time if the red flower is more dominant than the yellow flower. But that's kind of how humans are, is that we see yellow flower, we're all red flowers, and we see a yellow flower, we want to go and destroy that yellow flower. And you can't do that. I mean, that's not civil. That's not, yeah. Okay, so, yeah, the world would be different once we all learn how to purge out the trauma and fill in our own holes and stop being so predatory in body, mind, and spirit. We could all function on our own with no addictions to company, herbs, excess, pleasure, paradise, and alcohol. We would not need to get married or have children or develop groupthink gangs to push our agenda onto somebody else. We wouldn't be causing people to be so addicted to our company or repel them because they didn't conform. We wouldn't be playing mind games with each other. We would all be at home writing, making music, sculpting and learning, building, painting, and drawing our version of the beautiful world we live in. That's why we have artificial intelligence. So that way humans can learn what we need to learn and let the machines build the houses. Let the machines give us the devices so we can communicate on a much more intelligent level. I see people throw away the baby with the bathwater because they're like, oh, AI is going to make everyone stupid. Just like you said, social media is going to break down society. Not necessarily. Social media is actually giving people the opportunity to see diversity and see how they'd react to it, maybe learn how to assimilate to a diverse population. It's all in how you use it. And so AI can be used for good or it can be used for evil. It's all in how you decide how you're going to use AI. But I don't want to be building my own house. If they have a 3D computer, build me a little house. There's even $20,000 houses that are like 3-bedroom or 2-bedroom or whatever it is. And it's self-sufficient. Like, it could be like a double wide type of thing. You build yourself a basement. And then you have like a double, triple wide that's spacious if you want. And it's private. And it's green, sustainable. Okay? So, yeah. Yeah. We'd all function on our own with no addiction to company, herbs, excess pleasure, and paradise, or alcohol. We would not need to get married or have children or develop groupthink, gang, to push our agenda onto somebody else. We wouldn't be causing people to be addicted to our company or repel them because they didn't conform. We wouldn't be playing mind games with each other. We'd all be at home, writing, making music, sculpting, learning, building, painting, and drawing our version of the beautiful world we live in. And again, you wouldn't have to be out there commandeering other people's body, mind, and spirit with their politics, religion, and science. Ugliness would be somewhere far away, but not so near to remind us, where we would never go again. Or we never want to go again. So when you go on the internet and you punch in something and, type in something, sometimes I see stuff and I'm like, oh, I can't. Like Facebook Reels, some stuff comes up that's like violent and I just completely just scroll past it. Sometimes things on YouTube come up that are violent that I scroll past. But it's there to remind you how brutal humans can be to children, to each other, to anything different. Life with humans and animals in the wild or domesticated would be amazing with no hospital system, no holistic herbal remedies, no gurus selling death and religion, and no cult leaders selling a lifestyle, and no children lost in the world. There would be no need for surgeries, torture, vaccines, or medicine, and there wouldn't be any activism. People are only activists when they feel they have been slighted or harmed, or extremely deficient, full of holes. There'd be no vet system. We wouldn't be locking up animals in houses or in cages or in zoos. There'd be no need to rescue anything, because when you imply rescue, it means somebody was fucked up and the animal or human needed to be rescued. No need for birth control. No need for someone to behavior modify people. Women would not be selling their bodies. Men would stop being so aggressively sexual because they have needs because of hormonal imbalances. Women would not be selling beauty and self-harm so they could look like a socially acceptable person. Men would stop expecting women to give up all of her orifices to them. Mothers would stop starving their own children so they could look socially acceptable. Women would stop disfiguring themselves to fit in. We would have partners to share our life with, but not to be used as a tool for something. Domestic violence would be non-existent, and there would be no cannabis or drugs or escape partner induced pain. How many people are under the influence because they're married to people that they not sure they want to be married to, but they're just dealing with it? I mean, that's the thing. You don't know if people are under the influence. Yeah, it could be pain and suffering, but it could be the fact that they're in marriages, they're in relationships with people that they don't want to be in with, but they have to maintain image. And you don't know. There's no way for you to know why people are under the influence. But you can speculate that having to be under the influence means that you can't handle your own pain and suffering, and that includes your lifestyle, your belief system, every single choice you've made. And now you're just tolerant. Now you're just trying to find a way to tolerate it. And that's a pretty sad state of affairs. But again, I can't make an assumption that that's what people are under the influence. But I can tell you that I'm pretty much been alcohol and drug-free, cigarette-free. My husband smokes cigarettes, but he has been for a long time. Every so often he'll drink a beer. Every so often. But no, he can't afford to be under the influence. Of course, it wouldn't be for his job. No way. But he doesn't really need to be under the influence, really. I don't either. Okay? I can handle everything about my husband, about the world I live in, my own body, mind, and spirit. But when you're under the influence, you're trying to escape something. And only you know what you're trying to escape. But people can speculate. The prison system would be non-existent. Children would stop playing king of the mountain, trying to capitalize on their strength over another child. Humans would stop being experiments to somebody else. Humans would finally respect themselves. I see a total different world. One day, But until that happens, I will dream about the world because somebody has to. I will dream about that world because somebody has to. There are too many people who are in survival mode. They can't face reality, so they live in fantasy, and you can only live in denial for so long. All right? Reality will bite you in the ass, just like your symptoms and disease after so many times you carve them out or silence them. I'm at the point where I can dream for a better world. This is beyond Martin Luther King, but he did start the dream. Yes, I have a dream. I had to pick up where my parents left off. My parents did the marches with MLK way back when. Absolutely. In my opinion, all of us need to pick up where our parents left off, not repeat their mistakes. All violence begets violence. That includes the health and wellness industry. The vet system, the vaccines, the surgeries, all the different Ayurvedic types of remedies, every single antibiotic, every single diet, every single scalpel. Even first responders have to save people from themselves, because first responders wouldn't be there if people haven't laid the groundwork of accidents or heart attacks and strokes or drugs. You know how many times these poor firemen have to go and give somebody Narcan because somebody OD'd? Because people are suffering, miserable. They don't know how to relieve their own pain and suffering without turning to something that will cause them to cause a first responder to come out and save them from themselves. Yeah, nobody in the health and wellness community is saving anyone. They're laying the groundwork for not only a died suddenly, but first responder or the morgue, or for someone to capitalize on their weaknesses. And so, why you see so much crap in Hollywood is because of the hormonal imbalances due to all the programming, experimentation, hormone injections, whatever they are. Okay, I mean, Silicon Valley, I was raised in Silicon Valley, around people who have been engineered to be beautiful and smart, highly sexualized. Football stars, track stars. I mean, here in Ohio, you have a bunch of football stars here. Like, I was starting to watch Friday Night Lights, but I just can't. I mean, I understand the premise of that because it goes into like Midwest towns, middle America. Find the kids that don't really have too much intellectual going for them because that's not the culture. The culture is sports, which is fine. I mean, you know, developing discipline first. I mean, that lays the groundwork for other types of discipline. So you do sports discipline, you do exercise discipline. And then maybe, yeah, on the West Coast, East Coast, in some parts of the state, then there's intellectual discipline. So there's a mind discipline and there's a body discipline, and then both can kind of merge together and develop other things. And I understand the innovation. But the body discipline of beefing up and working out and playing sports is now going to the wayside. The whole Olympics is going to the wayside because people are dying suddenly. These kids are bred to do the sports and do all the cuteness, the diets and all the operations so they look hot. So you see the kind of the breakdown in Friday Night Lights I started watching, and you have the cheerleaders that look hot and sexual, and they become the prize for these football stars. And so these cheerleaders in high school become then the carrot to keep these football players going. Then you have the coaches, and the coaches keep things going. And then you have corporate America that come in and capitalize on the cheerleaders and capitalize on the football stars. Then you have people like Al Bundy. Their heyday was in high school. Their heyday was, so I understand the programming. The engineering of athletes, the engineering of academics, the engineering of journalists in our society, the engineering of so many things. And that engineering does break down. The programming does break down. And then when they develop children on top of that programming, and those kids, those grandkids, can't handle the air, food, and water, then they start breaking down. So excessive estrogen in women make them more beautiful, softer, and polarized. Everything is relative. But when you see that Persian princess from the 19th century, 1800s to 1900, and she looks very manly. People are like, you see the reactions when you see that she was the version of beauty. She was the vision of beauty back then. Okay? And so then you see what's going on in the 1930s and 20s. Right? So you figure from 1800 to 1900, and you see, the Islamic Revolution and all that, in Persia or Iran, the princesses look manly. And then the features have softened up. In the 1920s, the system started doing hormone experimentation, 1905. That was the beginning. Here, hold on, let me. In June of 1905, Ernest Starling, a professor of physiology at University College London, UK, first used the word hormone. Hormones, right? In one of 4 Croonian lectures on the chemical correlation of the functions of the body delivered at the Royal College of Physicians in London. Starling defined the word derived from the Greek meaning to arouse or excite as the chemical messenger which, speeding from cell to cell along the bloodstream, may coordinate the activities and growth of different parts of the body. Okay? And so Starling was a brilliant experimentalist, and these prestigious lectures were in recognition of his work, much of it in collaboration with his brother-in-law, William Bayliss, on the effects of innervations and pancreatic secretion on the intestine. Since Starling coined the word, the concept of hormone has spawned immense interest in a wide range of research fields, ranging from chemistry to molecular biology to epidemiology. In addition to purely scientific advances, the study of hormones has led to enormous benefits to human health, social, which is all the beauty stuff, and economics, right? You're using your beauty to go and hypnotize somebody, sell them something, whatever it is. Progress such as contraception, in vitro fertilization, and recombinant human hormones. And that's what people have issues with as far as the vaccines. More recently, the type of hormones and hormonally regulated metabolism and development has also found interest among the public health experts and the larger public after concerned scientists in the USA hypothesized that various man-made chemicals could interfere with the hormonal system to cause a wide range of disease and disorders. The nature and work of chemical messengers in the body had already attracted the interest of scientists before Starling. Experimental work by pioneers such as Arnold Adolf Berthold in Germany and Claude Bernard in France in the middle of the 19th century, that's like 1850, established the concepts that some sort of chemical communication takes place between different organs in an animal. Later in the same century, several physicians described the successful treatment of patients with certain disorders by administering extracts of animal endocrine tissues, such as the thyroid, adrenal glands, and pancreas, and you get the Red Bull, right? They subsequently showed that these disorders were due to hormonal deficiencies. Okay? And so then, even since the 1930s, all the way to the 1960s, and now, why we have so many predators looking for someone to plug the holes up in their own body, mind, and spirit and life, and why you see so much violence and competition. So I said excessive estrogen in women make them more beautiful, softer, and polarized. And you see with Anna Nicole Smith, you see Britney Spears, Miley Cyrus, the whole Disney world, okay, and the factory entertainers, assembly line entertainers, the music industry, the acting industry, the political industry, okay, the science industry, Silicon Valley, engineering, everything. But there's a price to pay. The breakdown is brutal. Well, look what happened to Anna Nicole Smith. I was highly estrogenic. Over time, those spells wear off. Over time, those hormones wear off. And the key thing that I figured out was 1999. That was the beginning of some crazy shit, because the climate probably change woke up the beast within. And then that was the battle I had to do for 20 years. And so in the old world, when women were so highly polarized. When they became older, they looked more manly, like Kathleen Turner. Okay? Because polarized, haha. Polarized, hey, whatever. Okay, so Kathleen Turner, back when she was doing Romancing the Stone, remember that? She looked hot, she looked sexual, even back when she was doing other stuff in other movies. And then as she got older, she became more manly, more matronly. Her voice got deeper. Her features became harder and more, chiseled like a man. And yeah, it's then the testosterone taking over the estrogen. She depleted her estrogen. And so in the old world, when women were highly polarized, when they became older, they looked more manly, like Kathleen Turner. Because then the testosterone overcompensated for the estrogen draining. You want to achieve balance, okay? Men can't be so full of testosterone that they want to hurt somebody. And women can't be so full of estrogen that she becomes hurt. Because then it's a fight. It's a war in the body trying to balance both parts out. And that was my fight every fucking month. And what happens is people hunt each other looking for balance. Women go on the hunt. So do men when they're so full of hormone imbalances. And then they also break down. This person, Persian lady below, did not have those hormone manipulations that we do in the West. That's why she looked more manly back then. Too many people think women in Hollywood are men and vice versa. No, it's called hormone distribution. All of us have been programmed on some level. It's in the food. It's in what we tell people to eat for sickness. It's in the medicines. It's in the remedies. I eat all food, but my body balances all the different hormones out. I'm not concerned what's in my food supply. I just make sure I balance everything out. How do you do that? Well, because when I feel sickness, that means the body's trying to push out the excessive hormones that would cause me to be one way or the other. So yes, I was born a woman and I have boobs and I have all the different accoutrements, but I'm not overly estrogenic and I'm not so highly testosterone that I become a man. Now here's the thing with men have been so full of testosterone. Okay? So when they get older, like you see Steven Tyler in Aerosmith, he looks like an old woman. Even some men probably develop, like you see Jack Nicholson, the weight that he's gained because of him aging, he's getting boobs. Okay? I mean, that's the thing. Are we all actually women? And then the hormone manipulation gave us the male. And that's why they're saying that what's going to happen to men in the future when the system purges out all the trauma. See, the reason why the system developed as far as highly polarized humans, where you have the man and the woman, and the quintessential man and woman was like Clark Gable and Vivian Leigh back in Gone with the Wind, and they were holding those hormones relatively okay, but there was also a backstory. There was things that were done, the men that did to women and all that stuff, what Marilyn Monroe went through. Because of that, that's the price of beauty and fame and fortune, is the things that go on behind the scenes that you don't see. And so when they finally purged out all that trauma of hormonal imbalances causing aggressive sexuality, aggressive hypnotization, aggressive predatory behaviors, then you might see everybody becoming some kind of version of a woman. When men finally, this is the thing with men, I think what men are afraid of, because they have been sold the Marlboro Man type of archetype, right? The what's his name? John Wayne archetype. And they go through what I'm going through, releasing demons, taking on food, and all of a sudden, there's more estrogen, there is testosterone. Maybe they're not as viable, they're not, so sexual, and they become, I don't say gay, because that's all programming, Anytime that people play with each other's body parts, conditioning for something, yes, you can develop any kind of sexuality. And it's also images, it's behaviors, it's social constructs, so many things, nature and nurture. But you could have men in our society that maybe not as sexual, but they're not as predatory, but they're still men. And then they have a good distribution of estrogen and testosterone, but there's men that are not as predatory. And there's women that are not as predatory, and they can live amongst each other without hunting each other. And they can have a beautiful relationship without destroying each other. And that's the thing, that's what I'm advocating, that maybe someday down, in the future, could men and women actually cohabitate without wanting to have a baby. without using each other up to the point of where they suck the life out of each other, where they end up dead. You know, that's the thing. And so what the system is now advocating is people be on their own, so they're not being cannibalized by their partner, who you don't know their background. They're not being victimized by their partner if they're not strong enough. If you're not strong enough, it doesn't matter what goes on. You won't be able to handle alone, and you won't be able to really survive your partner. You'll be cannibalized. And so a strong person, regardless, will be able to handle a partner, and they'll handle being alone. It won't matter. But a weak person won't be able to handle alone, and they won't be able to handle their partner. They would succumb, and have to be around people because they're that deficient, that fractionalized potential. They become 0.0001% of that penny. And that's what's going on right now. We have people who are basically pennies on the dollar. Okay? So, all of us have been programmed on some level. It's in the blood. It's in the food. It's what people tell us to eat for sickness. It's in the medicine. It's in the remedies. I eat food, but my body balances all the different hormones out. I'm not concerned with what's in my food supply. I just make sure I balance everything out. Okay? The system is not going to starve me or you. People starve themselves. So you see the picture of that, the 19th century Kahar princess was a symbol of beauty. And yeah, the long hair, the nice clothes. Yeah, when you have long hair and nice clothes, and that's not the usual out there. And yeah, beauty is all relative. It's in the eye of the beholder. And then you look at me when I was in my 20s. Yeah, I was a hot little fucking thing back then. I was cute. Very, very cute in my 20s. And I had power over men and made women jealous, and oh my God. But that can also be to your death. You become a target for a lot of different things. You don't want to be beautiful in this society today because the predators are insane out there. And they hunt girls like this. And girls make themselves a target. And so, oh yeah, I had my first period since last August, September. That was also the last time I had really bad arm pain. The climate shifted so aggressively and my immune system dropped an egg because the energy woke up the beast within. I don't think I have menopause because it wouldn't matter if the climate changed. When you have menopause and the climate changes, you know, you would just get old faster and deteriorate faster, and you would not be viable to hold yourself to term as well as a baby. So I think women have periods because their climate is changing within all the time due to the diversity they have within and the breakdown of their body. Okay? And that's why that young girl is afflicted with such heavy periods for months and months at a time, because there's so much diversity waking up within. She's exposed to so much. She inherited so much. The body is constantly going through an energy conversion, dropping eggs, dropping eggs, dropping eggs. She's so fertile. She's probably highly sexual too. And she's miserable. Can you imagine having PMS and having PMDD every single day of your life, every single week, as the body just keeps producing so many eggs that don't get fertilized, and so it comes out in heavy, heavy, heavy. That is miserable. I can't even imagine what she feels like. At least I had 2 weeks to kind of feel like I was relatively normal. She probably does not feel normal at all every week. Can you imagine what we went through as far as the J world within this climate change, with all the heart palpitations and the arm pains and the hives and potentially even constipation or diarrhea and the headaches and all that stuff? Can you imagine having to be dealing with that as far as someone going through PMS on a weekly fucking basis? Oh my God. She's miserable. She would have to be under the influence to even function. And she's lonely, yes, because no one around her feels that way. Imagine what I felt. People were like, oh, Jillian, you're lazy. Oh, Jillian, you're this. Oh, Jillian, there's something wrong with you. Yeah. Oh, I'll tell you, that's why I left California. Because they're all under the influence, and now they're dealing with disease, and I'm doing great. I think real true menopause is when women can't even evolve her own life, much less the life within her ovaries. And so, Yeah, here we go. When it comes to the remedy system, you're not selling human life to people. That's against the law. You literally cannot sell people human life. So nothing you're doing in the health and wellness world is saving anyone's life. Only first responders can save someone from themselves for that moment. Only because the person put them in that position to do that. You can only sell people state-sanctioned acceptable degrees of death and competition for their life. But you can't sell people their own life to them. Because it's not your life to sell them. So when someone goes, when they have a heart attack and they go to the hospital and they find cardiac enzymes, you know what the physician says? Oh gosh, you had a heart attack. Well, we don't want that to happen again. So we recommend a surgery. We recommend pills and powders and supplements and detoxes. And we recommend a food mitigation diet or a diet. And we recommend even a surgery to go and do something and add a stent or a screw or something else. So what they're doing is selling them an acceptable degree of death because they're afraid that's going to happen again, which most likely will. But they're not going to go and retract and redirect that situation. No, they're going to make that situation worse by then taking away more of the body's ability to release and retain. Because that's not the job of the medical holistic system, is to keep you alive. It's to take away your pain and suffering and give you what you want, what you were conditioned to want. Is feel nothing until there's nothing left to treat. And then you'll feel nothing 100%, called rest and peace. And so you can only sell people state-sanctioned acceptable degrees of death and competition for their life. But you can't sell people their own life to them because it's not your life to sell them. Human trafficking is when you sell somebody else on the market. All children are subject to that on some level, even in families. But even then, that has its limitations. You can give away parts of yourself, but you can't sell parts of yourself, such as a baby. But you can sell your liver. I don't know why you would. People do the strangest things, but they do, you know. You can also donate your organs, but you can't sell somebody else's, and you can't force somebody to donate their organs. But family has a sense of ownership over other family members. Since family is just a piece of each other, then families justify selling pieces of each other to the highest bidder. Oh yeah, my son or daughter can do that for you. Oh yeah. That's why families are deadly. They think they own you because you are blood. Politics, religion, spirituality, science sells you acceptable degrees of death according to the government. The root of all suffering is human and animal trafficking. The human-animal slavery system. Now you see why the laws are what they are. You can't sell human life. Only acceptable forms and degrees of death with permission from your government. So those that are selling you herbs and extracts and whatever because they claim to take away your pain and suffering, you're selling competition. Something else to compete with your life. To first turn off your hormones and turn off your pain receptors, then you have to feed that. So then you have to feed that enemy, turning off your pain receptors, turning off your life. You're not feeding yourself, then you have more of those enemies in your body. All of a sudden, you have vital organ failure. So the system allows you to sell people competition like animals. All animals are therapy animals. So everything is about what the government allow people to do to give them what they need and feel is company to them to take away their pain and suffering. If it means it's competition, fine. If it's invasive like a surgery, fine. So as long as it's state sanctioned. You can't sell human life, only acceptable forms and degrees of death with permission from your government. And so, death of a salesman. I wrote about this a couple of years ago. I forget exactly which angle I took with it, but climate change, the death of a salesman. When you can't afford to keep up with your old lifestyle anymore, some people don't know it until their circles die suddenly. And they either relax or they go with their friends. What does that mean? The party's over. When the fantasy you're selling isn't available anymore. When all of your customers are dead. Will you wake up or will you go with your customers? Arthur Miller, the author, the playwright of Death of a Salesman, was trying to explain how people are in denial that they don't have it within them to sell their lifestyle anymore. It's not just because they're too old. I mean, that could be part of it. But the environment has changed, accelerating everything, even the aging process. When people start realizing they can't afford to do what they've been doing, some are actively in denial. So you could be like 30 and not be aging, but your body's breaking down. And you're 30 years old, but you're in resistance, so you take drugs to try to keep up. Some pay attention to the indicators and change the way they do things. Others are actively in denial. But this play is timeless. The play shows you how people deal with facing changes. Some are enablers. They enable someone to keep resisting, or they enable people to handle the change. Some are deniers. Some people can't wait to take your place. Some people will capitalize on the changes. That is the human condition. How people deal with conflict. You literally cannot sell people life. You can only sell them death and competition for your life. But you can't sell people their own life to them because it's not your life to sell them. Human trafficking is when you sell somebody else on the market. When you sell somebody else on the market, all children are subject to that, even in families. And so that's when I then fed upon that. And so you see where all my ideas get birthed every single time I go through an idea that I build on. Okay? And so somebody posted in a Diazenda group, my dad just admitted my mom into ER at 6 p.m. He said they weren't fighting, and she started getting really emotional about a past trauma that involved him. He started crying, and when she realized she came to and was confused about what was happening. Then she started throwing up and telling my dad that the front of her head was hurting. So she's releasing the demons of that trauma from whatever that situation was involving him. Maybe he cheated on her. Maybe he hit her. Who knows? And so he's reliving that because she's reliving that. And then she finally, collects herself and realizes what happened. And then her body starts throwing up the memories. Literally throwing up those memories, those microbes. Then she started throwing up and telling my dad that the front of her head was hurting. The body's trying to push things out. Okay? She's at the hospital now, and they are running tests. Do y'all know what she should be asking for? People ask this stuff. I'm just like, yeah, okay. What did I say? I said, the system is purging out the trauma. This happens at the micro level, and at the individual level, at the community level, the world level. So you're seeing it. And so, yeah, there's a bug going around. Don't blame the food. People are blaming the food. They're going on these diets because they don't want to feel anything. They're going to end up dying suddenly. Those who starve themselves during this process. Choleric yellow, that's infection. And so I give you permission because your peers won't. And I said, whenever one person sits down and says, wait a second, it's time to rest, it helps other people do the same, not rest in peace. So, man cannot remake himself without suffering, for he is both the marble and the sculptor. And that's the thing. And so that's how you're going to take care of yourself, is when you stop trying to keep up with the Joneses. Here we go. Brutality comes from extreme deficiency. How do you eradicate brutality? People become whole again. Brutality doesn't always look like hate. Brutality can be extreme love. It's the love they bestow on people, and the love they withhold from people is how people brutalize each other. They keep you addicted, or they make you feel like you're not good enough. Humans always find ways to brutalize each other from what they withhold from each other. And so the only way you can achieve their acceptance is if you bow down and kiss the ring. If you don't kiss the ring, they withhold everything from you, even their respect. My husband is the only person I absolutely truly love and respect, and he has earned it. We are in a contractual relationship. Okay? So I try not to use it more than he can replenish. I do the best I can to make sure I don't use it more than he can replenish. Because even husbands can take so much from their wives that their wives actually get cancer, disease, and chronic illness because their partner has taken their life. And when the body is trying to take on information and release demons, they cure each other because they don't understand how to deal with pain and suffering. And so the weakest one gets sacrificed to oncology. The weakest one gets sacrificed to drugs and alcohol. The weakest ones get sacrificed to dying. And so my husband is the only person I absolutely truly love and respect, and he has earned it. We are in a contractual relationship. I respect all of you until you give me a reason not to. But I never play that I love you game, because that is a manipulation. Either you're trying to buy them or you're rejecting them because they don't fit in, because you didn't buy them anything to warrant any kind of love or acceptance. You are not enough for anyone. People have to buy their friendships. That's the bottom line. That's what they're saying. You have to prove your love to them with gifts, with money. They don't want to talk to you. They want to have fun with you, whatever that means. And the only way to have fun is to throw money at the situation. You have to afford to have fun with them. And if you can't afford to buy friendship, then you make a family and put holes in yourself. And then your kid will automatically kiss your ring. You have a built-in audience until you cannot afford them anymore. That's why I walked away from society. Because you're either addicted or you're frozen out. Y'all are too expensive. And could cost somebody their life. It is costing people their lives. People are dying suddenly trying to keep up with you. And that's extreme manipulation. That's how the system has weaponized people's lifestyle against them. And then the system gives you a scapegoat like air, food, and water. Nobody cares about what your dreams are unless they get paid for it. I mean, they can read it, but I mean, that's your dream. Doesn't mean it's that person's dream. And people don't want to be stuck listening to whatever you have to say. That's why I say things on Facebook. So you can read it if you want. You don't have to. I'm not going to force you to listen to me. Even my husband can't hear what I have to say all the time. Okay? And that's even with your husband and wives. They don't want to hear everything that you have to say. Believe me, they don't. And so, unless they get some kind of return on that investment. And that's business. Nothing is for free. Because even if your husband and wives listen to everything you have to say, doesn't mean it's their dream, because they have their own shit they got to deal with. They'll listen to you because they feel like they have to. But some people are just like, no, I don't want to listen to that. I can't hear my husband's shit about boats all the time. I'm watching all of his videos about politics and Trump and the right-wing shit. I mean, I can listen to it a little bit, but then and he can listen to some of my stuff a little bit, but then there's a limit on how much I can take. Okay, and that includes all. And so when you have someone that just completely just gives up everything to listen to you all the time, do they have the capacity to not only speak, but to be able to develop themselves? Or are they just listening to you? So that's the thing, even with relationships. How much are you taking up of somebody's time and energy, space? And so that's business. Nothing is for free. No one wants to hear your ideas because sometimes it involves change that they don't want to face. Sometimes it's an observation about society that they don't want to hear. They want people around them to keep the fantasy going. That's pretty much the death of a salesman. The premise of that play is about the denial people are in, and they don't have it in them to sell the lifestyle anymore. The fantasy is over, only they don't know it yet until they either die or they can't afford to live the life they live anymore. They can't afford to keep the fantasy going. That's why I advocate stand on your own 2 feet so you're not bowing down and kissing somebody's ring to find acceptance. And that includes all religions, politics and science dogmas, principles. Because you know who the king and queen bees are. That includes every single family. That includes all groups. Self-acceptance is the most important. And that's all that matters when you think about it. Because when you think about it, when you're dying and you're in your head or on your bed, you're on your own. I don't care how many people are around you. You're on your own. People could be right next to you holding your hand, but you're still on your own. Okay? No matter what, you're always alone. No matter what, even with your around people, you're always alone. And then you find ways to survive without needing somebody else's approval. Do your job and go home. That is freedom. If you wonder how people can be so brutal back in the Middle Ages, the children and the adolescents today are the proof. So are those who are stuck in their dogmatic religions. Sexual predators are extremely brutal. Surgeons are brutal. Why are people brutal to each other intellectually, physically, emotionally, and biophysically? Here's my answer. Competition, the body, mind, and spirit, and community. Extreme Darwinism is what causes people to be brutal. When someone wants to take over your body, mind, and spirit, they will find every way to do that. They will find ways to make you happy, what makes you sad, what makes you angry, and they will capitalize on it. They will even buy your body, mind, and spirit. They will buy their way into your life, and then you have no choice but to reciprocate or else be called selfish. And that's the dance. That's the temptation. Okay, so when someone buys you something, they give you something, and you're like, oh gosh, thank you. Well, they're expecting something in return. And so that's why you be very careful accepting gifts, because you don't know you're being bought. You're not even knowing it. So then you feel obligated to reciprocate on some level. And who's to say if that's an equitable reciprocation? And if it is, it doesn't even matter if it is or not. You reciprocate the way you feel is appropriate, and then you don't accept any more gifts because you will have to reciprocate something. And eventually the cost of reciprocation will be so high that you won't be able to afford it. And then the walls come tumbling down. The system has that's the dance, that's the temptation. The system has tempered certain aspects of human brutality, but we have a long way to go. How does the system control human population? They used your greed, they used your deficiencies, they used your politics, your culture, your religion, your lifestyle, your wants and needs against you. They use the competition in your body and in your community as a weapon against your ability to overcome. The system throws money at you. They throw social capital at you. They throw drugs at you. They throw the need to be connected to everyone all the time at you. They throw awards at you. The system throws everything in the kitchen sink at you to get you to take yourself down progressively. And as people become more deficient and they have someone to blame, they can use your peers against you. And if you are a weak woman, an elderly woman, a weak man, the predators find you. When you're by yourself, when you think you're safe, when you have taken everything for granted around you. And that's how they get you. 50 years ago, they brought people together and they developed amazing innovation. Today, you are in competition, extreme competition, with everything around you. That's why I advocate you become a whole person. Because whole people are not predatory. They're not looking for that missing piece. You have to make yourself whole. Nobody can fill in any of those holes that you have properly or efficiently. They just make the hole bigger and the damage becomes more extreme. Which is why having children make people extremely predatory. Obviously, you're trying to protect yourself and your child and your family. And then that's how wars develop. Because you have now something to protect. You have an investment you have to protect. That's your social capital. That's your everything. The holes in their life become extremely aggressive. And that's why people plug their children into their world, because they are deficient. Self-induced deficiency. Which is why they have pets. People are trying to plug up the holes. They're trying to stop the bleeding. My world gives people the opportunity to become whole again if they can handle it. But you can't be afraid of the food supply, and you have to cut down the competition in your life. That includes the health and wellness world. You literally have to stand on your own 2 feet to survive climate change. If not, the system will make the holes you develop bigger and bigger and bigger and more extensive, and even add more holes to the body through operations and injections with more competition. Can you only imagine with the mRNA and anything else they're giving you? It's adding more competition in your body. You got to go feed those little souls. And so, particle acceleration. Oh yeah. And the faster the system can accelerate the particles, the bigger the holes become. People can't get ahead. People can't fill in the holes faster as the holes are getting bigger, or new holes get developed. Particle acceleration accelerated everything you already expected. That's why you can't get mad at the system until you change your lifestyle and beliefs. But if the holes are too big in your body, mind, and spirit, you'll have to bring in everything to fill in the holes until they can't even do it. Until they can't even do it. And everything is temporary. Fillers are temporary. And that's people's lifestyle and belief system. And so a picture of a pink woman with blue hair and a blue child with a little bit of pink holes. Yeah. What did Albert Einstein say? Pure mathematics is in its way the poetry of logical ideas. Absolutely. I use math too. And here how I use math. Okay, so frequency and lack of lifestyle change is what's causing those accelerated numbers of high mortality rates. Here are some mortality rates in the United States in 2024. Infant mortality is 5,342 deaths per 1,000 live births at 2.52 decline from 2023. But cancer deaths, but that's assuming you get a baby. People they can't get pregnant. Okay? So the less people that get pregnant, then you don't have as many deaths, right? And so you just got to look at how many people are actually getting pregnant. And if you can't get pregnant because of whatever, then you won't be included in whether the mortality or live birth. So cancer deaths is 611,000 deaths or more than 1,600 deaths per day. Life expectancy 79.25. And so the American years. The American Cancer Society projects that the United States will have more than 2 million new cancer cases in 2024. The first time this has happened. Heart disease remains the leading cause of death in the United States, but COVID-19 was the third leading cause in 2021. Other leading causes of death include accidents, strokes, and respiratory diseases. So COVID is a frequency. It wakes up the demons. And then it causes then a cascade of symptoms that, yes, cancer and heart attacks and strokes. And so high frequency, 1 + 1 = 2. So that was 30 years ago. You had a male and a female or whatever, and they made a baby. So then you had 3 and 4 and 5 and 6, whatever, right? Today, we have climate change. We have ultra low frequency. So you have -1 + 1, which is kind of like basically people who are deficient, equals -1. Not even plus, it's times. Because you have -1, you get a lot of people who are in the negative, times positive ones, equals -1, but that also equals a +1 equals 1, which means that of those 2 people, only 1 survived. But in a high frequency environment, like way back when, but not an ultra low frequency, you had 1, a whole person equal 2, and then you had a long life of maybe 100 years, less than that, right? But in ULF, you have people who are in the negative with people who are in the positive, and they're still negative, right? It's all relative. And only 1 person lives. You're in high competition. Climate change is a lot more death. And everything is relative because you can't take things literally. You have to understand the abstract ideas of physics. Everything's relative to whatever you're comparing against. You have to understand how physics works. And so nobody's going to pour the truth into your head. It's something you have to find for yourself. And so I said, be heartless, because this is the wrong generation for the people who have a good heart. Oh, that's so horrible. Not really. Because you look out there and there's so many predators and children who don't like what the parents don't like. There are parents who are very vociferous in who they don't like. The kids pick up on that and they become the extension of their parents, but even more predatory because they're that deficient. And then they go and hunt people. They look for the weakest people. That's what these kids they're hunting that older Jewish man in their neighborhood, they're going to torture him. Yeah. That's what we've produced in our population because of intolerance. And so you are in a microbial fight to the death with everyone you are in contact with. Integers. Integers are whole numbers like whole people. But people fractionalize their own potential through dying and reproducing and having children and surround themselves with diversity, and they don't fill in their own holes. They keep diversifying so much through the health and wellness industry, and so they're mortgaged up the yin-yang. And so integers are whole numbers, both positive and negative, and can be used in many fields, including science, engineering, and finance. Okay? And so you'll see how you can add integers, and you can add plus and you can add minus. So if you add 2 negatives, okay, it's still a negative. You add 2 positives, still a positive. All relative to what positive and negative means. That's representation. It's a proxy. And then when you times, it's always a negative because you're using that much energy. You always be in deficit. And you divide, it's the same thing. Okay, division is just the other side of multiplication. So yeah, no matter what, whenever you multiply or divide something, it's always in deficit. Whenever you add something, it's just a measure of what you're adding. Because you can add 2 negatives. It doesn't turn into a positive, it's still a negative. But if you do then the exponential, so you do the multiplication division, then it becomes a negative. But how do you get a positive? Well, because adding 2 negatives or timesing it. Times same as it's like an exponential of addition. That's why negative times a negative is a positive, just like adding a positive plus a positive. Okay, 2 negatives times a negative equals a positive. And then you have 2 positive equals a positive. Whether you add it or you multiply it. But when you add a negative and a positive, it depends on what the higher number is. But still a negative, still less. So when you add so when you have plus 5, well, still less. Yeah, you have plus 5. Yeah, sometimes you have a negative. You add a negative and a positive, it'll always be a negative. It'll be less. So it's definitely, you see the patterns. Okay? And that's people and that's microbes. So I know people like to diagnose me. They're like, oh, Jillian, something wrong with Jillian. She has issues. She had a bad childhood. Yeah. So before you become a psychologist, you have to ask why you went into that profession. Because I'm sure there's other psychologists, social psychologists, or psychiatrists are looking through my page, looking at me, going like, what is she talking about? And I can see them trying to diagnose me. Before you become a psychologist, you have to ask why you went into that profession. Because no one just goes into the profession without wanting to mind fuck somebody because they were mind fucked themselves. Why would you go and try to brain fuck somebody? Why would you go and try to commandeer someone's mind? Oh, I want to help people. Why would you go into that? I went into that because I was raised by one and I want to go mind fuck her back. But that wasn't going to happen. But I found a way to do it. Okay? So anyone that goes into psychology or whatever, they've been screwed by somebody in the head. And they want to go, or somebody hurt them. Or they were told that this is the way to, I don't know. Because there's not, I mean, I guess there is money in psychiatry. And I guess if there is money, if you're part of group studies, they give you money for that. But before you become a psychologist, you have to ask why you went into that profession. Because no one just goes into that profession without wanting to mind fuck somebody. No one goes to that profession unless they want to have the ultimate control over somebody else's mind. But remember, you were given only one part of the story. You might be able to read people. And you might even give a diagnosis. But what you don't know is why you've been radicalized to do that. You think you're helping people. Well, you might be. You might be on some level. But in the long run, you are also part of the mass experimentation, and you think you're on the inside. But you're still on the outside, just like your patients. And one day the system will mind fuck you, and you'll be on the receiving end of whatever it is you've done to people. So you have those who are vicious intellectuals that have all this jargon and theses and even their own degree, thinking that they are immune and invincible against those that don't have a degree or have a thesis. Well, yeah, you were taught in one climate. Now the climate's changed. Can you adapt and evolve? Oh, no. Some of these vicious intellectuals are still working with old information in the old world, and they'll get mind fucked and they'll get screwed. But they won't know it because they think their degree is going to protect them. Well, I guess ignorance is always bliss, isn't it? That's the same thing that you've perpetrated on other people who are not as educated as you, is that, oh, ignorance is bliss. Well, yeah, I could say the same thing to you. I say this because I have mental health professionals checking out my page. I have no idea what their intentions are, and I don't care to. Because if you don't know that we're in climate change and I speak what I speak, you'll be extremely tempted to diagnose me. And I've already been there and done that. Let me diagnose you. And so I say people pay other people to shut them up, even their children and the life in their body. That is why the whole health and wellness system is paying other people to shut you down, little by little, until you end up in the morgue. People cannot handle life, and so they shut down their own life and family's life or starve it out. So when you pay someone to carve something out or to shut down the life in the body or stop the body from releasing, you pay someone to muzzle your own immune system. And then when the body wants to live, you blame whoever triggered life in your body and said they're trying to kill them. That's how the system flipped the life and death on you and your family. You pay and love someone to take your immune system down, essentially silencing you. And you hate people who bring you back to life. And you only worship first responders who in that moment might have saved your life, but inevitably you were the one that caused them to be there to begin with. First responders save people from themselves. And at some point, first responders can't even save you from yourself. When people are that intentional to ending their own life, you can't get in the way. That's why the system is the way it is. You have to be the one to give permission to end your own life. And the system will try to save you from yourself until it cannot anymore. Dying people are very dangerous when they're near death. They hate everyone, but they also love everyone until there's nothing left to live off of. It, whatever it is. What is this? Oh. All right. Tornadoes, weather underground. I have that. Okay, the system brought people together 50 years ago to develop more innovation. Children, whatever. Now they're bringing you together to annihilate each other. They just sped up what you already expected. And now it's your husband against wife, sister against brother, roommate against roommate, animal versus human. Every single time you get together, it's competition, survival of the fittest. Okay, it's in the math, it's in the physics, it's in the chemistry, it's social constructs. Scientists rule the world. Absolutely. And Weather Underground, that's all the same stuff. Okay. See, and I was able to actually convert words into integers. So justice equals closure equals death, right? When people say, I want justice, no, there's no way to put a nominal or a cost to justice. There's really no way unless you can actually find something. Super funny. Okay, so justice is all relative to how you want to characterize what justice is. Sometimes it's money if you can prove that money was lost and you can, and all that. But when it comes to just people doing whatever, how do you put a cost to a human life? There's no way to do that. So they just want the death of something. They want the death of that energy. And so justice equals closure equals death. Peace equals closure equals death. No justice, no peace. No is -1, death is -1. So that's two wrongs, right? Two negatives. Equals, so equals -2, both die. Or -1, one lives and one dies. The laws of integers. Okay? One lives, one dies. So why would that be? Because you have no equals -1. So you're adding two negatives equals -2 or -1. Well, why would it be -1? Because it's -1. One lives or one dies. Because it'd be like the, well, it's right. The one, -1 times +1 equals -1. But then that -1 is that +1. So one lives and one dies. The laws of integers. What's not said. You add two negatives equals a negative. You times a negative times a positive equals a negative. You're always in deficit because you're expending energy to develop energy. You have to keep producing energy by expending energy until all the resources are gone. How fast can the resources replenish at the rate the activists are expending the energy? The system will use up your children and suck the life out of them until there's nothing left, until the children cry uncle or die suddenly. The parents can barely keep themselves alive, and the children are owned by the system until they're 18 and they've already been indoctrinated. Parents have to save themselves if they know how to. And I have no problem with any immigrants that want to find a better place here in America. I have no problem with my government taking care of refugees from any country. I just hope they don't use you as a scapegoat for whatever else is going on. And if they do, that's fine. Just make sure you protect yourself. Don't go to war with anyone in any country you're trying to escape to. Do your best to stay out of the public because somebody will be radicalized against you. Because there are Americans that are radicalized against any immigrant. And whether it's a Jewish person they're against or an Islamic person they're against, there are people in America who've been radicalized against everybody. Okay? This is for American citizens and for refugees who are on the track to be American citizens. Your peers have been radicalized against you. You have to survive the war, even the war that you're trying to run away from and go towards. I was flown out of Vietnam, flown out of the war in Vietnam, and entered into the American wars. And I didn't have a choice. I was a baby. I had to survive. It is you against the world. I don't care what status you are. You have to survive it. And the only way to do that is don't get radicalized against anyone. People will, and you have to stay away from them. That's why I stay home and stay safe. Because either they're radicalized against their own body and they're going to party it out until they die suddenly, or they're radicalized against somebody else who has a different thought process. And they'll mock you and jeer you and give you weird looks or not even talk to you, freeze you out. And so you just stay home and stay safe because it's probably better that way, especially in this crazy world. And so that's why I had those pictures of no justice, no peace. And these are kids basically annihilating themselves because their parents radicalized them. And so those of you who are against what Israel is doing, your kids are watching your reaction and acting upon innocent people. Harming your neighbors will not stop what goes on in other countries. Two wrongs do not make a right. The system is using the kids to destroy the elderly and the weak, and they used you to radicalize them. And the more you're radicalized against Israel and Palestine and every other culture, the more these children will turn into terrorists trying to save the world. So yes, your activism and your hatred will turn your children into serial killers and intimidators, and they will be like an autoimmune disorder, just keep picking and nitpicking at everything, attacking itself, projecting onto the nearest scapegoat. The children are the most vulnerable. That's why I'm not impressed with you having children, because what will they turn into? Someone I have to protect myself from? That's what's most scary, is the generation zombie. And the university system is a proof. These kids will not let up. No justice, no peace. Death is closure. They want death, or you get no peace. They will destroy society, and they will destroy you. So no, I'm not impressed with your child going to university, because they will be radicalized to death. And no, I'm not impressed with your new baby, because what will that baby turn into? And I think I'm perfectly justified in not being impressed with traditionals right now. Again, look at the educational system. Look at the university system. No justice, no peace. You are at war. All right. Yeah, 5 teenagers arrested after attempting to kidnap a Jewish man in Stamford Hill. Yeah, we've done this. All right. Resistance, what makes your medicine better than my medicine? Okay. All right. Vicious intellectuals. Okay. Yeah. That's people who think their way is the only way and that's it. When you say processed food is poison, you are an avid and vociferous vegan vegetarian. You have declared war on everyone. The Nobel Rest in Peace Prize is because they developed something to regulate growth and silence genetics. So I will never be getting a war for anything, because I'm not in the war anymore. I've saved my own life. I'm not trying to silence it, and I've controlled it. And so what's my reward for the war is life. It's the fact that I get to keep living and developing. But you only get awards when you find ways to take people's life down as humanely as possible. And so that's it. Yeah. So that's all I'm gonna say right now. I try to avoid being a vicious intellectual. Because you read one side of the story of whatever's out there doesn't mean that there isn't another side of the story, because there is. My advice to those out there who are activists: attempt to provide both sides of the story if you can. I'm not saying you have to do it. I'm just saying, is there a way for you to attempt to provide both sides of the story? And it'd probably piss off your activist friends who are only taking one side. But that's the risks of advancement, of dreaming again. That means that you're going to be the one to sit down and relax and release your demons and dream again, while others are in such resistance, they'll take themselves out, and they will. I have no problem. Someone says, when they post on their Facebook about recalled meat and milk and cheese and whatever, and I'll say, you're proving how deficient you are. You're proving why the system has to do what it has to do. You're just the example. And I'm going to share. You will be the example. You'll be my example of why the system does what it does. Because myself and those who understand what life is are not intolerant to the microbes in the food supply. The system has to go and recall the foods because they have so many people who are deficient. So I have no problem saying that. And it might piss off my activist friends out there who are still taking one side, who are under the influence. But again, you can't make people feel pain. But you can use them as an example, as they can use me as an example. Oh, Jillian's sold out. Jillian's this, Jillian's that. I'm not saying that. They're saying that. But people will defend their position by attacking me. But how would you use me as an example of something? I don't know what. But that's what the system is eradicating, is the deficient people who keep reproducing and dying, and who can't handle air, food, and water. And that's just more confirmation of why you have to become whole again. And using other people and animals and other things to fill in the holes is what causes then more competition and have those holes become bigger and bigger and bigger. And why people feel like they have to keep balancing their hormones with outside entities. All right, good luck. Bye.